Welcome to A Sharper Life. I'm your host, Nikki Sharp, a two-time best-selling author, wellness expert, and transformation coach. And I'm here to talk all things health, wellness, relationships, spirituality that will ignite your passion for personal growth and empower you to live a life of purpose and fulfillment. And I know there is so much information about there on health, spirituality, relationships, biohacking, and so much more. And that is why I bring on the leading experts in each field, as well as sharing my own stories to help demystify what really works and what doesn't when it comes to changing your life. And each week that I really hope that you have a pen and paper handy, because whether we're talking about how to have better sex through tantra practices, overcoming self-sabotage, or how to travel hack your way to business class for $0 when flying, you will want to write down all the incredible tips that you learned through this show. And by the way, those are all past episodes, so scroll on through the archives to have a listen. Now, something for you to know about A Sharper Life. Since starting this podcast nearly 2 years ago, it has been my mission to shed light behind social media, Instagram, the wellness industry, and things that you may have preconceived notions about. And it's hard because we live in a time where everything is available to Google. Each week there is a new TikTok trend on how to lose weight. Words like narcissism go viral on Instagram, then everyone thinks that they're with someone like that. And so it becomes really hard to know what advice to follow and what is truth from fiction. And if you've been a follower for a while, then you know that I come on here and share deeply vulnerable stories. And I always try to peel back the curtain of my own life to show you that you're not alone in your challenges and that we all go through tough times. We're all human living in this human experience. Now, with that being said, today might be the most vulnerable podcast that I've ever done. And this episode has been pretty daunting for me. I've been wanting to record it for months. And every time that I thought about doing it, I froze. I literally just froze. And so here we are today, and I'm going to share as much as I can while still respecting some agreements that are in place. And if anyone is listening from the legal side of things, everything that I am sharing is from my perspective, and it is solely to do with my own experience. I speak nothing about my ex's experience, nor am I accusing him of anything. I'm not putting any words in his mouth. So I really just want to make that known that based on legal agreements, this is my experience of my relationship and my divorce. So something that I am really looking forward to getting back to, though, with you all is that sharing the brand values that I have always had and I've always lived by, which is being authentic and being vulnerable. And I feel like after you listen to this episode, you'll have a better understanding of why I couldn't share certain things at the time that they were happening. Now, I'm also going to be answering questions that you have. So I want to just preface this and say, if you're interested to learn more about what happened, or you're going through a breakup of any kind, you're dealing with heartbreak, I did a 90-minute masterclass that was incredibly, incredibly powerful, where I unpack so much more about my own relationship, the lessons that I've learned, and I give you a ton of tips for your own healing. And this masterclass, it's in a bundle. It comes with a 30-page From Heartbreak to Healing workbook with all of the healing modalities that I used, journal prompts during my own divorce. So the feedback that I received from doing this masterclass was just, it was mind-blowing truly for me. And so I want to offer that to you, that if you are interested to learn more from what I share on this, or you're going through your own challenge or heartbreak, I will leave that in the show notes for you to take a look. So this episode is probably going to be a little bit all over the place. And I'm saying that because I haven't written notes for it. I decided that I really just wanted to sit down and talk to you, because I've put this podcast on hold for 4 months, and that was a really, really hard decision to do. It is the longest time that I have ever put a pause on anything in my life, especially when it comes to my business. I love what I do. I love getting to help other people, but you can't help other people if you're not helping yourself first. And so I realized that in January, I needed to take a break from pretty much everything. I put almost my entire business on hold. I paused the podcast. I didn't know when I was going to bring it back. And quite honestly, there's been a fear about redoing the podcast and re-releasing it, because I know since starting it, I've paused it a few times. And that is because my nervous system was so dysregulated during my marriage and the engagement. And even though there were so many wonderful, beautiful moments, I couldn't keep up with doing a business, planning a wedding, being married, the challenges that were happening while trying to also support people and doing this podcast, which I love. So anyways, that being said, this is going to be, as I said, probably all over. I don't know if I'm going to get emotional or not. I don't imagine that I will, but who knows? Because the emotion doesn't come from the fact that I got divorced. It comes from so many other things, which I will share with you. And then I'm also going to be, as I said, answering some questions, because obviously you all want to know what the fuck happened. And I am in a place where I'm ready to talk about it. So let's start a little bit from the end, and then I'll jump to the beginning. I am now living in London. I moved to London in February 6th. I left on a flight with my two kitties, and I live in Notting Hill in a beautiful flat. I got really incredibly lucky. The universe has absolutely had my back during honestly the hardest time of my entire life so far. I hope nothing more challenging comes, but it's interesting because I've been here now. By the time this is released, I will have been here almost just shy of 3 months. And when I arrived, the first 2 weeks, I felt on top of the world. Like, I got on the plane in Miami, where I was living for the past 3.5 years, and I fell asleep. And I woke up in London, and I went and picked up my cats. And by the way, animals don't need to be quarantined. I got a lot of questions about that. If animals need to be quarantined coming into the UK, they don't. But you do need to work with a good company. And I highly recommend the company I did work with if you ever travel with animals. But I arrived and I got the keys. I met the landlord. And that night I was laying in bed, and this is on February 7th, I honestly felt like I went through a time just vortex, a portal, a dimensional portal. It almost, my brain couldn't really make sense of yesterday I was in Miami and getting divorced, and today I am in London in a flat that literally fell into my lap with my two cats. I feel safe. I feel happy. And it was the most bizarre thing, truly, but also really, really fascinating that, life can truly happen, can truly change overnight. So as I said, it's about 3 months in. I'm now here, and the last 2 months have kicked my ass beyond anything that I could even begin to tell you. So when I got here, I felt amazing. I felt really good. I was excited. Moving, you always have the adrenaline rush. And I actually just interviewed Dr. Caroline Leaf, and we were talking about how long it takes to build a habit, which most people think it's 21 days. And she said, no, it's actually, I believe she said it was 96, but after 21 days that you're feeling really good. But on the 5th week after the 21 days, you actually start to doubt yourself, go into a depression. And we talk about my divorce actually very openly. And so I share that just because about two-ish weeks in, shit started getting really bad. It started getting really, really hard for me. I went from, so many different reasons why, but essentially my nervous system was calming down for the first time in 2+ years. And I know so much more about the nervous system than I ever did before. So I'm really grateful about that. But as the nervous system calms, you start to process things differently. So now I'm processing, even though I was processing so much emotionally and physically and all of these things, once you're in a place where you feel safe, your nervous system calms down. It's actually quite often like if you've ever gone on vacation and you've been really stressed at work and then you go on vacation and you get sick and you're like, why no. And that is because you've been in fight or flight in adrenaline, go, cortisol. And that was my life for the last 6 months before moving. So I get here and then I was really excited. I got invited to go to the BAFTAs, the gala, which is a few days before the actual BAFTA awards. So I go, and the reason that I tell this story is because it's what kicked off sort of the depression that I went through. And I will be really honest that I did. I've gone through 2 months of a depression unlike anything I've ever felt. And I'll tell you what I did about that. So I went to the BAFTAs, and the next day a friend, and there was a red carpet. I think it was orange, but nonetheless, there were photographers there, and a friend of mine the next morning had said, oh my God, were there any photos from Getty? Getty is always the main photographers that go and they publish them online. And I was like, oh, great. I'm going to go look. So I start looking at images, and this is on, I want to say it's like February 9th or something. It was like just a few days after I arrived. Or maybe it was a week later, something like that. And I see a photo of myself on Google Images. And, periodically I'll Google myself just to see kind of what's out there, if there's any new articles or things like that. And there was an image that was taken from my Instagram, and I was like, that's weird. And I go to it, and it was on Reddit. Now, I don't know if you know about Reddit, but it is not a very nice place. I don't really understand. I get the concept of Reddit, but I really don't understand how people can sit there behind profiles with no name and just slander people. And it's okay. And someone like me, I can do nothing about it. So anyways, without going into too much detail, otherwise this will be like a 3-hour long podcast. I see that there is a Reddit thread dedicated to how much people hate me. And I am going through a divorce in this moment. Like, I have just gotten legal word. I have been offline for the past month and a half. I went offline as well as pausing my podcast because I couldn't do it. So I'm going to kind of work backwards here with my story, but because being in Miami and moving out was so unbelievably hard. I'll tell you about it, but it's hard for me to almost go back there. I think my brain has sort of shut down some of the trauma from it. So I see this Reddit thread and I start reading it, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, in my community on Instagram, my community here on the podcast, those who, just follow me, say hi to me in the street, you all are amazing. I love you. Honestly, I love this community so freaking much. So it was really, really interesting to see such hatred on Reddit. And I posted about it on Instagram, just one tiny little thing. I had done a story and in little writing. And of course I shouldn't have done that. So now I'm telling more people about it. I'm not going and reading it anymore. But the next day I woke up there were like 50 new comments, and people saying like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that there's this thread. And people really they really, really slander me. And there's a few comments that it's clearly coming from people that, when I say know me, they know some certain details of my life. But they don't actually know me, because let's be real. If you're sitting there talking shit about someone, you don't really know the person. But that was really hard. So that was 1 week after I moved to London. And I had received an email from my ex. So we had lawyers during the divorce, and I knew that was something I needed to do. So I got a lawyer when I told him that I wanted to divorce. And we have an agreement in place, and I'm not breaking anything by sharing this. But he had sent me an email after I posted my one post on Instagram just saying we got divorced and that I had mentioned this Reddit thing and how hard it was. And he wrote me this really big, long email, basically saying, this isn't a threat, but I don't want to have to take legal action against you. And I'm like, brother, like, I haven't even said anything yet. Like, I'm talking about how people are talking shit about me. Like, what? So he's been, just FYI, he's been blocked across the board on everything, including email. So I only saw it randomly because I checked spam. So the reason I go into all of this, though, is because at the same time as I've just moved, and moving is hard. You're getting boxes and parcels and things, and I'm trying to set up gas and electric, and I'm in a new country, and I just went through a divorce. Like, I just went through a divorce as well, and I have my 2 cats, and I'm trying to make sure they're good, and it was a lot. It was a lot at the time, and then I had this Reddit thread, which sucked, but I was like, okay, that sucked, but whatever. And my lawyer had advised me and just said, just monitor it to make sure that nothing shows up that's against our legal agreement. Because I do believe that my ex went and started writing some things. I have no actual proof, although I feel like I do. But that's neither here nor there. So the reason I share all of this is because I start getting cyber attacked and hacked. And I have someone trying to hack into my Gmail. I have someone hacking into where I host my membership. So that platform, the back end, God, they were so good getting that. I had someone trying to hack into Facebook. And then I had someone try to extort me for money, saying they had videos of me and they were going to release them if I didn't pay Bitcoin. And the scary thing about that was that there was passwords that I have used in the past and passwords of my assistant, personal ones that I have no access to. And so I reported that I asked a few friends, what do I do about this? And because there were a lot of emails. And so all of this happens in the second week that I came to London. And the thing is, I couldn't share any of this on Instagram because the second that I would say something, people would go to Reddit and start talking about me and being like, oh, well, she's known. Shouldn't she know that she should like be dealing with this? This is part of the territory. And I'm like, I'm sorry. If kids in high school are committing suicide for bullying, no, it is not okay to sit there and bully people online. It is not. Now, I have a pretty thick skin. Thank God. I've been through enough in my life. But I'm like, it's not okay. And even for me, I'm like, it was so shocking. And then to be getting all these cyber hacks. So anyways, a friend of mine had said I needed to go to the FBI IC3 crime unit. So I do that. And all of that happens within the first 2 weeks that I'm here. So I know that this podcast is about my breakup, but part of that and the reason that I've had such a hard time bringing the podcast back is because I feel like I have just been I feel like I've been put in a washing machine and I've just been like put on tumble since getting to London. Like, it's been the best decision I've ever made in my life to leave that marriage and to move. I have no regrets whatsoever. And at the same time, behind the scenes, it has been really, really hard because I'm by myself now. I have these 2 cats. Gemini was getting sick. I also had to get her surgery. All of a sudden, I'm paying way more bills than I've had to pay. And the divorce cost me a ridiculous amount of money, both between lawyers' fees, living in Airbnbs, traveling because I was coming back to London, planning to move here. So I was kind of scoping things out. I mean, it was a lot. So now that I've kind of gone on that little random tangent, I want to just say I am so, so happy though now. And the fact that I'm even doing this podcast, it's reigniting something in me that has been missing. And I'm excited to share because what I'm sharing in this podcast and why I was a little nervous to do it is, I said, it's the most vulnerable one I've ever done because when you're getting attacked left, right, and center and and people are saying really, really incredibly hurtful things while you're also going through a divorce, while you've also just done an international move. It's been the hardest time in my life. Okay, so apparently I'm going to cry during this podcast, but I want to say all of that because that's the tail end of what has been a year of absolute hell. And when I say that, I am so grateful for my marriage. I'm so grateful that I met this person. I'm so grateful that I had the dream wedding. I have learned so much about myself that I didn't know before. And all of the pain that I've gone through, all of it was worth it for the, excuse me, for the knowledge that I have now. And I know like a question that's come, or not even a question, but just like online hate of people being like, how can you sit there and, teach about your dream life when you had this fairy tale wedding and then you get divorced? And it's like, well, 50% of people get divorced. Let's be realistic here. I don't think anyone ever gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. I sure as hell did not. And I went into marriage thinking that within, 6 months, we were going to start trying for kids. That was my plan. And I am so grateful though, because I know more about the nervous system. I know more about patterns, about why we attract certain people, why we choose certain people. I have a better awareness and understanding about how our childhood plays into the partners that we choose. I understand about attachment style. Like I feel like I just went through the most expedited PhD you could possibly go through. So I have no regrets. I would do it all over again if given the chance. And that was actually a question that did come up of, what did I do to try to save the marriage, if anything? And I'm like, I did fucking everything. And I will be really real and honest about that. I did everything because when I went into this marriage, I loved my husband so much. I wanted to start a family with him. I was so excited to share my life with you guys. And so we started therapy before, and you guys know this if you've listened to the podcast, we started therapy before we got married. And that was just a prerequisite for me, not because anything was wrong. It was actually because I wanted to make sure that we had the correct tools, just as I'm teaching you in all of these podcasts and UTP and all of the courses that I do. I'm teaching you the correct tools to know how to navigate new things in your life. And so this is a big new thing. So we went into therapy before and I really enjoyed it. I personally love therapy. I think everyone should work with a coach like me or a therapist. Like you should never be trying to do things on your own. We were not built to solve and do things by ourselves. So we get married and then leave that current therapist. Just didn't feel in alignment with her at that point, which was fine. I think it's really important to find people that you gel with. And I was recommended my therapist, Dr. Eva Brown, who specializes in the Gottman, so the Four Horsemen. He studied with Gottman, Dr. Gottman, and she works a lot with trauma response. And I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD from my childhood, and so it was really important for me to find someone that understood about love languages and trauma and marriage, and has been married for a really long time. And we had a good rapport, and she's very spiritual. And so we started working with her in, I want to say it was November, right after we got married. And that was because things were not good. They were not good very, very early on. And I'm going to jump around a little bit, but we worked together with her for 11 months. And in those 11 months, I did a insane amount of solo sessions because it was really important for me that I would do the work with him in our couple session. And we would do 2-hour sessions once a week, by the way. And then every other week or so, I would do a solo session. And so I really was taking what I learned and integrating it and working with my therapist. And I'm so grateful again, because I've learned, I feel like I'm a master at nonviolent communication. Like I used to get angry and in a fight, like something that I learned is that we all need to have fighting rules. Like fights are going to happen, and couples that tell me, oh, we don't fight, that's really unhealthy too, because that's avoidance of discomfort and conflict. So there needs to be rules, boundaries about fighting. And nonviolent communication is truly, it's incredible. And I do feel like I'm a master at it now, because I used to, when we were first together, I would get angry and I would slam a door, or I would say, fuck off. And I'm sure many women, you guys listening, or you ladies listening, I'm sure you understand, like, we can get mad and we want to be heard. We literally want to be listened to. And so in that moment, it's just like, fuck off. And then I would slam a door and walk away. So I learned that doesn't work. That does not get you what you want. I changed the way that I approached things, and I changed the way that I would approach the conversations, my needs, my wants, my desires. And we learned about how to do a positive request for change. And the thing is that I'm someone who I like communication. If you meet me in person and we sit down and we start having a drink or a coffee, we're going to go deep real quick. I like deep conversations. I don't like shallow. I find it terribly boring. I'd rather be by myself. And so with that, I like communication to discuss things so that both parties are on the same page and that you're not sitting there assuming or freaking out, because when you make assumptions about the other party, you create stories in your head. And so something that my ex-husband would do is stop talking to me. He would, and here I am, I teach about relationships. All of these things. And I've studied with some of the best experts in the world, both online, in person, reading books, courses, you name it. And I've done, it's incredible. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful that I have the knowledge that I do and I implement it. But he would get angry and stop talking to me and ignore me. And it basically felt like I was in a room or in a house with a roommate who hated me. And I'm sure you've all been there. I've been there, where you live with someone and you're like, oh God, this person hates me and I don't really like them and I don't know what to do. And like, it's awkward and it's uncomfortable and it makes your nervous system really like high alert, on edge. And so he would do this, and he would also shut down towards our cat, Simba. And I remember thinking quite early in the relationship when we got Simba, I'm like, this is not okay. I would not have kids if this doesn't change. And that was a really hard thing for me, because by the end, and when I took the cats, and I moved out of the house and I was in Airbnbs, so I was by myself, right? Immediately, Simba, his energy shifted. And I was so grateful for that. And even being in London now, like, my cat is terrified of men. He's terrified of male energy. And no, my ex-husband never physically assaulted me, abused me, or touched the cat. And I just want to put that out there, because that was something that he had insinuated that I had said. And I am saying no. However, there are different forms of an abusive relationship. And it is not only about physical. So when someone shuts down and doesn't talk to you, that is a form of emotional abuse. And I am not, but I want to repeat this. I am not saying my ex-husband was abusive. I am saying that is a form of abuse that I did experience from my own point of view. Now, we worked with our therapist a lot on this, because what she explained is that my body, based on my childhood, because the same thing happened with my parents, especially my mom, that my mom would get upset about something, me, someone else, something in life. And this is the problem, is so many of us do it. So I'm not putting any blame on anyone, because I know that I've also probably done this too in my life without realizing it. Which is why this is so important, the self-discovery work to change your behavior so you become a better version of yourself. But I grew up where I never knew what I'd done to upset my mom. And still to this day, I don't know. My mom gets upset and shuts down, and I don't know what it is that I've done. So my inner child, little Nikki, freaks out. And our therapist, Eva, had said to my ex that this is literally killing Nikki. Her body is shutting down. And this is when I realized that something needed to change, because nothing was changing. Nothing was changing, even when he was told that his shutdowns are literally killing my body. And I was starting to get so sick. The year of marriage that we were together, I was sick a lot. And I was starting to drink more and trying to cope because it was wine was a coping mechanism. And if you've listened again to this podcast, I've talked about when I did my, what did I do? The Mind Bloom thing, the ketamine, that wine is a comfort for me. And what I recognized through so much self-discovery of all of this is that it's because wine helps me regulate, alcohol helps me regulate my nervous system, because I've been in a marriage where my nervous system has been so dysregulated. Now, I'm not going to sit here and put blame or play the victim, because that doesn't get you what you want in life. And it sure as hell is not who I am as a person. So although my nervous system was very dysregulated, one thing that I kept working with Eva on, and I'll put her details also in the show notes. She's amazing. She's been so supportive. I'm so grateful. And we did a lot of different things on tools that I could use to regulate my nervous system, because it's all about taking ownership for yourself. And so, sure, I can sit there and say he would shut down, I would get dysregulated, but that's just giving away my power. And I remember one therapy session that I had with her after one of our biggest fights that we had. And I was like, I couldn't even walk in the room. My hand literally was shaking. I was so scared to see him. And again, I'm going to say there was no physical abuse. It was the fight dysregulated me. I was dysregulated. And she said, Nikki, you're giving away your power. And I realized in that moment that I was becoming sort of victim mentality without realizing it. And so I've done so much work on how I can show up as the best version of myself in this relationship, in this marriage, while still trying to show up for him. And here's where I'm going to come to. So the story right as of now, right, we're 30 minutes in, it's going to go a little bit all over the place. But what I'm going to say, and I said this on Instagram when I first said that we got divorced and there were a lot of questions coming up. I said, you can't be in a relationship with someone that doesn't like you. And I made the final decision on doing a divorce when I recognized and realized that my husband did not want to actually be married to me. I very firmly believe that he loved the idea of being with me, but not me. And so in September, I asked for a separation. And again, I said, this is where we're going to kind of jump around a little bit. In last September, I asked for a separation. We had just gotten back from a month-long trip in Europe. It was one of the most horrible, horrific, horrendous trips I've ever done in my life. There was a time where I packed my suitcase and I nearly bought a $6,000 one-way ticket back to Miami because things were so bad, the shutdowns, the fights. And we went to his friend's wedding, and we went the night before, and it was just me and him, and I had booked this whole thing, and we got in a fight once. I mean, when I say we got in a fight, I really want to take accountability on what I did. The problem is I don't know what I was always doing because he was so angry at me. And when someone isn't using effective communication, you don't actually know what you've done other than just not being liked. So we go on this, in end of July, we go on this wedding, and it was so bad the night before that I left. And I said, I'm not coming to the wedding. Please go enjoy. These are your friends. And he begged me. And I said, no, it's, you're having me come for you to look good, not because I think you actually want me to be there. And I told him, fine, if I'm coming, we're doing a separation when we get back from this trip. And I'm coming as your friend, not your wife, to support your friends. And that was in July, where I'm starting to post all these beautiful photos. And it was really, really, really tough because I was trying to save my marriage. I really was. There is no part of me that went into this thinking I would get divorced. There is no part of me that wanted to. I've always wanted to get married and be married and find the love of my life. I think we all want that I was going to have kids with this person. I'm so fucking grateful that I did not, though. Because we ended up having a very quick divorce. And I know some people go through years, and even before we went on this trip in July, we got on the plane and I said, this is not working. Our marriage is not okay. And that gives you some insight that we got married a year before, and a year later, I'm telling him we've been in therapy and it's not something's not working. And so from all of this, we do this trip. I end up going to the wedding. We change a bunch of, I felt like I was starting to just bend over backwards and I was turning myself into a pretzel. And that was something that when we did the separation, I really took a deep, hard look into myself and my patterns. And I recognized that I was literally turning myself into a pretzel to get him to like me. And when you turn yourself into a pretzel, I want you to think about an actual pretzel. There's not flowing energy. The energy is kind of going and then it gets stuck, but it's stuck within. So my energy as this radiant feminine creature that I am, this human being where I want to give and I want to share love and I want to create things. I was spending so much time and energy and money. And I talk about this in my program, UTP, the Ultimate Transformation, all the time. Where are you spending your time, energy, and money? And are you seeing the results you want? So I spent upwards, because we would split therapy. I probably spent $20,000 on therapy, just of my own money. And no regrets. I'm so grateful I did that. But I got really frustrated because I'm spending so much time trying to work on this relationship. I'm apologizing all the time for things that I don't even know what I've done. And I'm spending so much energy, which is why I would get burnt out and I'd have to pause the podcast because I couldn't do it all. I couldn't. And so it really kind of comes down to this, that you can't be in a relationship with someone who doesn't like you, and you can't be married to someone who doesn't choose you. Now, I know that he chose me. He gave me a ring. I understand that. But I don't believe that he chose me for me as Nikki, with all of my shadow sides, with all of my wonderful sides, with all of the things that I'm going to grow into and all of the sides of myself that I've shed. And I think that's really important when you are in a relationship. If you are thinking about marriage, I am going to tell you, you better like all sides of that person. Because if you're going into the relationship for potential, the potential of what you think it will be, I can guarantee you it will not work out. It will leave you feeling depressed, unfulfilled, resentful. Or if you're on the receiving end, you're going to feel really bad, because I can tell you from experience that I was looking at the relationship of, there was so much potential, right? There was so much potential. This guy slid into my DMs and said, I'm into Gabor Mate and do this. And I go to Burning Man and spirituality and I meditate and I listen to all these podcasts. And I was like, wow, you sound kind of too good to be true. And the problem was, he was too good to be true, meaning a lot of it was not true. And something that I had told and again, this is from my experience, right? Something I had told my therapist and a few close friends was that I felt like he lied on his dating resume. We all have a dating resume, you guys. We all do. We all have like when you think if you're on like Tinder or Hinge or like whatever you put on, like I've helped friends with their questions, and it's like, that's your profile, right? That's your resume. We all have our dating resume. Here's who I am. Here's what I've done. This is, what I've learned from my past relationship. This is what I'm looking for. Here are my values. And I started getting to this point where, and I think it started actually happening before we got married, but I just started having little doubts and being like, I don't know if the person who came to me and showed me all of this, I don't know if that's really the person that's sitting in front of me. That's a mind fuck, by the way. Let me tell you, it's a really big mind fuck, because you want to believe people. I want to believe people. You want to believe that people are truthful to who they are. But here's the reality, is that most people are not truthful because most people are not authentic. Most people put on masks because they're afraid of judgment from other people. Now, me in my life, I don't wear masks. I don't put on them. I have in the past, absolutely. What my younger self, but I am so raw and vulnerably, authentically me, which is why I say you either like me or you don't. And I understand there's people on Reddit that really fucking hate me. And that's, you know what? Okay, that's fine, because I really, really like myself. So that little tangent I'm saying though, is that you can't be with someone who doesn't like you. And I do not feel that my husband actually liked me. I feel that he had lied about on his quote unquote dating resume of doing all of these things, because when push comes to shove and you have to do the work and you're going to therapy and you are needing to make a change and your therapist is saying, when you shut down and don't talk to your wife, her body is getting sick. It is literally getting sick enough that she could possibly one day die from cancer or something. Like, that is how bad my body was getting. And there's no change. You start to question, does this person actually want to be with me, or do they want to be right? And that was something in my relationship, in my marriage, that I learned. And that was a hard one. That was a really hard pill to swallow. I needed to be wrong. Didn't matter what it was for, about the fight, whatever it was. He needed to be right. I needed to be wrong. Now, in a relationship, it will fail if you have that mentality. If you track things and you do tit for tat, your relationship will fail. And if it doesn't fail, you're going to hate each other and you're going to hate yourself. If you are constantly looking at what are the things that they do for me, right? It's going to fail. It's not going to be a happy relationship. And so there were so many moments and instances of that where I'm putting my heart just on my sleeve. I'm saying, I am sorry if I did something that upset, as I said, I learned nonviolent communication. I took accountability like a boss. I would say, here's what I'm feeling right now. So when instead of slamming doors, what I would do is I would tell him, I'm taking a timeout. I would go to my room. I'd pull out my phone. I would look at the emotional wheel. I would get really clear on what emotion am I feeling right now. I would go and journal. I would do a little bit of breath work, even if it was just like 90 seconds. And then I would go back out and I would say, are you open to chatting? And this is nonviolent communication, by the way. I would say, here's what I'm accountable for in that fight. And so I'm sorry, here's what I'm accountable for. Here's what I'm feeling from it. So not attacking, not you. Here's what I'm feeling from it. And here's my positive request for change for next time. I got really good at doing this. And essentially, when things don't change and they feel like they're getting worse and they're getting worse and they're getting worse, and I felt like I'm going in and I'm trying more and I'm trying to do all these different things. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to give him space. Okay, I'm going to do this. We're going to do maybe more therapy, less therapy. I was bending myself into a pretzel and it got exhausting. And when we went on our honeymoon, it was such a bad trip. I can't even begin to tell you. I did a podcast episode about it. And if you read between the lines or listen between the lines, you'll hear how hard it was. But I didn't want to sit there and just blankly come out and say this was a horrible trip, because there were some really amazing moments. There really were. Like when I posted the beautiful photos, those were moments we did actually have good times. The challenge for me is that we got there and he got really mad at me. This was a common theme throughout the marriage, is he would get really mad at me and I wouldn't know what. And when someone is mad at you that much, you literally start to lose your mind. You go crazy, because it's like, what did I, and this is what I grew up with. This is what I grew up with as a child with my mother. And so there is a pattern being repeated of why I chose this person, right? Because it's familiar. And this is a familiar hell. Doesn't feel good. I don't like it, but it's a familiar hell versus an unfamiliar heaven, which is to be loved and accepted and have your parent actually be there as a parent. I don't know what that's like. My parents were not there for me, and I love them. I forgive them. I know they did the best they can, but I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD because of my childhood, and not just from them, but from multiple things of that. And so it's kind of no wonder that subconsciously I attracted a partner that resembled my mother very much. But the problem is I didn't know that in the beginning. I didn't know that because I was presented with a different person. then I actually married. So anyways, going back to our honeymoon, he got really, really mad at me. And on night 2, I even said, what did I do? What are you so angry about? And he told me, you can make it up to me tomorrow. And I'm like, what? Like, okay, what? So we tried to make the best of it. And I spent 2 nights of the honeymoon having dinner by myself. That was not fun at all, but I mean, it is what it is. After one of the nights that I came home, the stars were so beautiful that night. And I came in and he was sitting in the same chair that he had been sitting in all evening, didn't move. And I'd said, like, I'm going to the bar. Do you want to come? I'm going to dinner. Do you want to come? I'm, sitting outside. Do you want to come? And so I came in and I opened the blinds. I was like, the stars are so beautiful. And he got really mad that I opened the blinds and he said, I didn't ask for that. I'm like, okay. So I closed them and I went and sat outside and I could feel his energy, and I'm very susceptible to people's energy. So of the 5 clairs, I'm clair empath, clair cognizant. So I'm a very sensory person, human being. And I was like, okay, I can't be around this. So I left and I went and sat outside somewhere, because it was so beautiful that night. And I came back and he was just really, really angry. And I honestly wish that I could tell you what it was about, but this is why I say that you can't be with someone who doesn't like you, because I think he was just angry because he just didn't like me. And he told me that he was like, I'm not even mad at you at this point. I'm like, oh, thanks, bud. He's like, I'm not even mad at you. I just should have listened to my friend. Something like, I should have listened to my friends. So what did his friends say? Well, they said 4 months before our wedding, they said, are you sure you want to marry Nikki? Are you sure you want her to be the mother of your children? Now, he told me that, and a lot of my friends were like, why would he tell you that? That's horrible. And I'm like, because we had an open relationship, communication. That's super important. Like, it's you and me against the world. And the reason that they said that, and again, I am not speaking for anyone else. This is my experience. He was a very different person when he was around me. He was a very different person when he was around his friends. And he was a very different person when me and his friends were together. So when me and his friends were together, he was this person that neither one of us really understood who it was. And this is what I talk about, the masks. And so they think that, hey, it must be Nikki. Nikki must be this really bad person, right? And it got to the point that actually, even when we were flying back from our horrific month-long European trip, that a friend of his had messaged me and said, I really hope that you're not, because I said that I was talking about our summer travels, and his friend had said, I really hope that you're not mentioning me in the podcast at all. We're super private. And it was not a nice message. And I'm like, I barely post who I'm with. I'm actually very private. My friends, I very rare, because most of the people I hang out with don't want to be on Instagram. And so I'm very respectful. And my ex didn't stand up for me at all. And he didn't say anything to his friend and be like, why would you even think that? She was nothing, I was nothing but respectful at this party. And there were so many reasons why I shouldn't have even gone, but it is what it is. So there were all these different little things happening. And this is, again, the shortened version of it. Now I'm going to answer a few questions as I'm talking. So what are the things that made you so in love then divorce? Well, I fell in love because we had incredibly open communication, and we were vulnerable with each other, and we had fun together, and it seemed like we had the same values, and we would exercise together. We would cook together, and we had so much fun. The caveat is that it was COVID, and I didn't see him out with any of his friends in the first 6 months of COVID. And by that time we'd gotten engaged, and I did see him with some of my friends, and I can tell you I was not thrilled. There were definitely some, I'm not going to say red flags, because, and I talk about this in the masterclass, red flags are so hard to spot because they're so subjective to you and your life based on your own experiences and what you want and your values. But there were things that I started seeing when we would hang out with my friends that were definitely worrisome. An example, I had two friends come and visit me, and we went out and we had such a fun night to Faina, and we went to the show and we're getting drinks afterwards. And he got super, super, super angry at me as soon as we walked into the bar. And I'm like, and none of us, me and my girlfriends, we were like, what? And he left. He went home. And none of us knew what that was about. Same thing happened. We were in New York, went for drinks with some of my friends. And he was like, Nikki, you were so rude to them. I can't believe how you talked to, and I'm like, these are like really close girlfriends. What are you talking about? And instead of coming to me the next day and saying, hey, like I saw this behavior and I don't know if this is you or if this, like maybe I just got triggered by it. He would attack me right then and there. And then I would go to sleep with my nervous system all dysregulated. And then the next day apologize because I didn't know what the fuck I did, but I'm trying to make things better. Right. And so I saw these in the beginning. So the question then is, why did I not do anything with them? And the really honest to goodness truth is that I wanted to be loved and accepted so bad that I chose a partner that would give me everything that I knew. Like I knew that I was going to get married quickly. I knew that the next person coming into I literally manifested it. So when people tell me like, how can you teach manifest? I am the fastest and best manifester you'll ever meet, truly, hands down, because I knew exactly what I wanted. And guess what, guys? I got exactly what I wanted. I did. I said I wanted a fast marriage. I wanted to be engaged within 6 months, that we could elope and wouldn't even care. And I was like, I just want to be loved. Well, guess what? In 6 months, by the time we got engaged, I did. I felt loved. But I also know now that that was love bombing. So I'm very aware of what love bombing is now. Didn't know before. And so the red flags, as I'm seeing them, they're subjective and they're hard, because when you see a red flag, me, Nikki, I have red flags too that are not going to be good for someone else. Like I've gone out on a few dates with someone and I'm recognizing patterns in myself where I make myself like overly like easily available to text. Like I'm always available, or like, you want to meet up? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. So I don't really like play hard to get. And why? Because little inner child Nikki just wants to be loved and accepted, because that's what I don't feel like I got from childhood. And I still don't really have that from my parents. Like when I went through this divorce, and this is going to sound really brutal, and I love my parents more than anything. I don't feel that they chose me. I don't feel chosen by them as a daughter. I don't feel loved really by them. I don't feel that they even really like me. And that is very much mirrored in my relationship with my ex. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel that he liked me, all sides of me. I felt that he was trying to change me. I feel like my parents are constantly trying to change me, and not in kind ways. I've received very critical character analysis emails from both my parents, and not just emails, but like things they say to me. And so it's kind of no wonder that I married someone that represents very similar of what I went through in childhood. And here's the thing, you guys, we all do this until we learn to break our patterns. But to break the pattern, you have to become aware of it. So I actually had to go through this marriage to see my patterns, because I didn't know them. I didn't see them. But it's been so fascinating to see my own, quote, potential red flags, and to be like, whoa, okay, take a step back, Nikki. Like, we're in no rush. And like, really, I'm in no rush for anything, because I've been married. I don't care about getting married again. I care about finding someone who treats me with love and respect and kindness, and vice versa. And I have a shitload of love to give to someone, and I cannot wait to receive that love in return, but I'm not rushing into anything. And so anyways, that's a bit of a tangent. Coming back to why didn't I do anything with the red flags? It's like, you kind of take them, you store them, but I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be chosen. I wanted to be accepted, and fucking A, I got it. I did. I received it. I felt like the most chosen person. By the time that we got engaged, I was so excited. We started planning this wedding. It was my fairy tale come true. It was everything that I've ever wanted since I was a little girl. And I'm not talking about the fairy tale princess dress. I'm talking about I felt chosen. So you tell me, if you've grown up with two parents you feel don't love you, and you meet someone that you fall mad, and I was madly, deeply in love with him, the version of him that I learned. And you go through that and you see a few little red flags. What do you do? So for me, we kept planning the wedding. And the thing is, by the time we got engaged, we'd already started planning the wedding. We'd already put money down. We split the wedding 50-50. So I paid 50% of the wedding. So did he. And I feel very much an equal in this partnership, in the sense of like, I showed up as an equal would. If I get married again, there's no fucking way I'm paying 50-50 for it. There's no way. But do I want to contribute? Absolutely. Absolutely I do. But here's why I say that, and why I'm a little feisty on this, is because 1 month after the wedding, well, a few things happened leading up to the wedding, and I'll explain them. But actually, let me go there and then I'll jump back. So 1 month after the wedding, once again, he's mad at me, and in a fight, he says, "You owe me thousands of dollars." And I'm like, "Come again? What? I'm your wife. Like, what do you mean I owe you thousands? Like, we just paid for a wedding. Like, what?" And I was like, "Would you?" And he's like, "Well, I've been tracking things." I'm like, "Would you care to tell me or like show me?" And he shared a spreadsheet that he had been keeping track of for the last 2 months or month or whatever, of literally every single purchase that he made, I made, down to the percentage of, if we were splitting at 50-50, if he was paying 70, I was paying 30. Now, I am okay and very willing to be a supportive financial partner in a relationship. I think that's important, that you have your set rules in the beginning, which we did. We knew that percentages that I would pay, he would pay. But when you start tracking things down to the detail like that, it takes a woman out of her feminine, and it puts me in my masculine, and it puts me in defense mode a little bit. And then when you have a husband who is angry at you, and multiple times throughout our marriage, and would say, well, you owe me the money, thousands of dollars, you haven't paid me back. Like, another example is when we went to our honeymoon, he did pay more for our honeymoon. I'm grateful for that. And he sorted most of the trip, which was amazing. And he had said, "I'm going to get you a spa treatment, as a gift." I came back, I had turmeric on my fingernails, white fingernails, and it got turmeric, and I was really sad. He was like, "How was it?" I'm like, it was great. It was amazing treatment, but I'm really sad about about the nails. Well, he got really upset because he thought that I was complaining, and I felt like I'm not being allowed to just be a woman and talk about my experience. I didn't blame anyone. I wasn't bitching about it. I just said, I'm kind of sad about it, because we had a photo shoot. We were going to do a honeymoon photo shoot. And he got super, super angry. And then he made me pay for my own spa treatment, which was fine. Like, I have the money, but it was little things like that make you not feel very good and not very treated with respect. So going back to prior to the wedding, we started getting in a bit more crunchiness. And I think like everyone attributed it to, it's just stress. Like, and I personally loved wedding planning. I'm a really good planner in general. I really loved it. It was not stressful for me at all. Like, sure, little bits here and there, but it brought out so much creativity and joy. So we would send out emails to our guests, because I know that most people don't read the website, and it was still kind of during COVID pandemic times. And I sent an email out one time, and he got really, really angry at me that I sent it out without his approval. And I'm like, we're sending it like 50 guests on your side, 50 guests on my side. And I'm like, why? I don't understand. And he said, "Well, you have a way of pissing people off, Nikki." Now, I kind of laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was not. I teach communication, essentially. I teach people how to learn about themselves. I work with clients for a living. And I was like, okay. So it was like little things like that leading up. And then 2 months before the wedding, I did actually give the ring back. And we were in Monaco. We were there for the Grand Prix, invited by a friend, my friend that I like organized the whole thing. And the day before, or the day we were leaving, I felt so sick. My body had completely shut down. And this was something I couldn't explain during the marriage. My body would do these shutdowns, and I literally felt like I was dying. Like, I, honest to God, felt like I was dying. And so something that a little motto that I kept going through was, the good news is nothing lasts forever. The bad news is nothing lasts forever. But I'd be like, even though I feel like shit right now, this isn't going to last forever. So we get to Monaco, we're with friends, and it was not good. It was not good. And I took the ring off one morning and I said, we can't do this. We can't get married. You don't like me for me. And I don't know if I can become, or if I will become, the version of me. So, right, I talk about potential. It's like, I don't know if I will ever be that person. And it's not fair to either of us to get married to each other if you're waiting for me to be someone that I may or may not become. It's not fair. And we sat there and I cried, and and the thing is, we'd already paid for the wedding in full. By this point, I think we had like one last payment. Everyone had booked their tickets. We're 2 months out. What do you do? What do you do? You know, like, this is my worst nightmare. I want to marry this person. I love this person, but the person that is showing up most of the time is not someone I like very much. And that's what's really hard. And I understand when I talk about like red flags and whatnot, is that he probably saw things and I know this to be true. He saw things in me that he didn't like. He says that let me rephrase this. He had the sharp trigger. So when he felt that I was being sharp, which I can be like with clients, I literally will stop you mid-sentence. And that's not because I'm being an asshole. That's because I'm trying to help you grow and like get out of your head in that moment. Right. But I know that like all people, if I'm tired or overwhelmed, I know that I can be a little snippy or snarky at times. Like, it's also like my family, where last name is Sharp, like my whole family's kind of like that too, which is funny. But he had an allergic reaction if I was ever sharp. And instead of saying, hey babe, I'm triggered right now, right? The nonviolent communication, he would get really angry, really, really angry, and shut down or say not so nice things. And he was not someone who was so verbally, I don't even like this word abusive, but like, he was not someone that would like say all these really horrible things. It was the shutdowns that were so disruptive for my nervous system because of my own childhood, right? So that's my own shit to deal with. That has nothing to do with him. He's the trigger for me to work through my own stuff. And I think people forget that in relationships. Like, we blame the other person for doing something, and it's like, I can't control if he's going to shut down or not. What I can control is my reaction. And so that was a lot of the work that I did. But it kind of gets to this point, right, where 2 months before, we're like, what do we do? And we go back and like talking, and it's like, I've given him the ring, and he says, no, we have to do this. I want to marry you. I love you. Right. So we go through with it. And I'm so glad I did. Honestly, I'm so glad. I fucking loved my wedding. I loved it. There's like very few things I would change. I mean, of course I would change the person, but even like, I jest on that, because if given the opportunity, I would redo everything all over again. Because as I said before, what I know now about myself, about my patterns, about how I show up in relationships, about, my own insecurities in relationships, my coaching has become next level with my clients because of all of this. And honestly, I loved getting married. I loved it. It was so much fun. For the most part. I mean, if you listen to my wedding episode, it was also really, really overwhelming. And part of that was because we had a hike in the morning, and I told him I didn't want to do the hike. I was really tired and overwhelmed. And he said, you have to. Everyone flew out for us. We have to be there. And so I didn't listen to my own intuition. And because of that, I was really overwhelmed and exhausted for the rest of the trip. Then we get to the honeymoon or the mini moon that we did afterwards. And I'm not going to say I'm some, crazy angel. Like, I'm really not wanting this to sound like I'm painting him out to be this horrible person, because I think deep down, we just weren't the right people for each other. I think that he definitely liked the thought of being with me, but not me. And I wish him nothing but luck and happiness. And I hope that he can find someone where he can be his authentic self and they can be their authentic self. And we just didn't match, and that's okay. And I didn't know that until after 6 months, which is a certain phase that I mentioned before. So it's kind of impossible to know prior. I mean, I now know what signs to look for. I didn't before, but we go on our mini moon. Just such all these like little names for things like baby moons, mini moons. They're kind of funny to me, but we go on this and it was bad. We just got married, and you would think that it's like the time of our lives in like honeymoon bliss. And it was not. It was completely the opposite. He was angry every day. I couldn't understand why. So my body's shutting down. I'm trying to figure, we got in a fight literally 3 days later, and I can't prove anything, of course, right? But I thought that he was secretly filming me because I had raised my voice, and I was very aware that I was being a little sharp. But as soon as that happened, I was like, don't ever do that again, right? Like, absolutely not okay. And I apologized, and it's like, I think that was the challenge, is that I felt like I was constantly apologizing for things that I didn't know what I did. So to kind of cut through, we get back from our mini moon, and once again, we're sitting there, and I'm like, what are you so angry at? I like, help me understand. And we weren't in therapy at this point. I don't even know, but I was like, I genuinely don't understand why, like, what was it at the wedding that I did so wrong? Now, the fact that I'm even asking that is pretty fucked up. Let me tell you. He was mad about everything. I did pretty much everything wrong at the wedding. And the thing that struck me the most, that was really sat with me, and I'm going to I shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to, because again, this is all my experience. He said, you didn't perform well enough at the wedding. Now, 2 weeks after getting married to the love of your life, and you hear that, what would you do? I didn't really know what to do. Honestly, I didn't. So for the next year, we had some really, really amazing moments being married, and we had some really, really horrible ones. So now with that, I basically then, from this, we're married for a year, doing therapy, all the things. And I really, I can't stress this enough, that I am not trying to sit here and make my ex look to be this absolutely horrible person. I'm really not. I am sharing my side, my perspective of what happened for me over the course of the hardest year of my entire life. And part of that is because the triggers that I had, that's the work. That's the work, is to learn the triggers that you have. How do you deal with them? So when someone else is shutting down, what do you do? If someone else is yelling or saying something mean, what do you do? And so for me, I finally got to a point where 6 months into our marriage, I told our therapist, I said, I think I want a separation. And that was my inner self, my intuition. And she was like, no, let's keep going. Let's keep going, and I did. And I showed up. I did. And when we got back from this European trip, I told him, I want a separation. And it was really interesting, because from that moment on, I thought that it was going to be a healing separation. I thought we were going to take some time apart, both go to therapy, do our thing, and then come back together as a more united front. And the opposite thing happened, where through therapy, there was a lot of character analysis. It's what I like to actually say, character assassination, where we had to write each other letters and read them and even our therapist was like, that letter is unacceptable. You can't give that to Nikki. Like, and he already did, but so it's really hard when you're getting love and then you don't, and then you're getting told off and then you get love again. And it's breadcrumbing. And that was a term that I didn't know, but I know now. And that's what I grew up with in childhood. And so it makes a lot of sense for me why I not just attracted him, but looking at my own patterns of that type of person is not just who I attract, but who I choose. Why? Because that's what's familiar for me from my childhood. So the unfamiliar heaven is where someone is loving me for just me, all of me, someone who I like literally don't know what it feels like. That's the like crazy thing. Someone who doesn't try to change you, someone who just wants to see you succeed. Like my birthday, for example, last year, we were at a wellness hotel and I said something that clearly triggered him. I apologized immediately. He took some time. I apologized. It got heated. We both clearly said something. And then he left the hotel on my birthday. So I spent my birthday weekend, which was fine. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it's like, it's things like that I in June is when things really started. I would say that's when the relationship for me really started disintegrating. That's when I started messaging friends saying, okay, something's seriously wrong. It was the first time that I was willing to even admit to myself how wrong things were. But the thing is, when you're in this and you're bending yourself in a pretzel, you don't know what's up from down. You don't know what's right, wrong, what's your truth, what's the truth. And so I got really confused and I just kept trying to do my best. And at the end of the day, guys, like, I'm like you, I'm just trying to do my best here. I really am. Every day, I try to be a better person than I was yesterday. I try to learn some lessons. I try to be kind. I try to be loving, kind to myself. And so anyways, from the separation, it was very clear quite quickly that that it was not working out. And he had said 3 different times in text that, maybe it was time that we started thinking about conscious uncoupling. Now, when someone is saying that, that's telling me that they're not in it to fight for this anymore. And there was a final day when he sent me a specific message and I said, okay, this is it. We're done. And then what happened from there was I came to London because I had no fucking idea what I was doing with my life at this point. I was scared. I was terrified. I was uncertain. So in October, I came and you guys saw me going to hotels and this. It was literally the worst time of my entire life. I saw my aunt and every single person in my life was super concerned. I lost a lot of weight, not on purpose. I literally felt sick all the time. I couldn't sleep. I had no home. I had my house with my cats, but I didn't know, I knew that I was going to move out and he was going to extend the lease. And he was even trying to get me to extend the lease with him. I'm like, no. And then once I did, because they needed my signature, he then went and was like, well, I actually decided I'm not going to keep it, which meant we both were going to lose our deposit money, which I needed, because the lawyers cost a lot of money, hotels, Airbnbs, it's my choices were very limited. I couldn't go home. I tried going home one time and it was really hard. So during this process, I essentially not only divorced my husband, I divorced my mom. And I learned that my relationship with my mother will never be ever what I need or want. And to heal my inner child and my little girl, I had to set some really firm boundaries there. I received the complete opposite of support. So I couldn't go home. It was, no emotional support from my parents. I couldn't talk to you guys about it on Instagram because I didn't want to say anything until the divorce was finalized because there were so many, I don't want to say threats, that's the wrong word, but there were so many mixed messages, that's maybe better, coming in of like, I'm going to keep the apartment. I'm not. And so it was putting me in a place of uncertainty. And I'm like, do I stay in Miami? Do I leave? I didn't like Miami anymore at this point. I was really over it. I wasn't happy. I lost my vitality, my zest. London made me happy. So spend money to come here, to be here. And then I decided to come back out in December again because I wasn't going home for Christmas. And I didn't want to say anything to you guys until we had everything finalized, because there were so many of these ups and downs. And my lawyer had advised me as well, saying, just don't, because dealing with his side was not easy. Yeah. And so finally I honestly, I didn't even know what I was doing when I got back from London in November. I didn't know what I was doing. And then we finally decided, the settlement agreement, and that I would move out, and that I would move out on December 7th or so. And I did. And I put my stuff in storage. And then I came to London for a month, and I went back, and then I rented Airbnbs, which were so highly priced in January. It was nuts. And then I, got the cats out here, and it was the last, when I say the last 6 months, I'm going to say from July until literally now. Like, this is the first time I'm recording this podcast because I feel finally grounded and better. I'm doing my 5-day detox right now. But from July until now, it has been hands down the hardest time of my life I've ever experienced. I've been the loneliest. I've been the scaredest. I've had no fucking idea what I'm going to do. And yet I just kept putting one foot forward, putting a vision in front of my mind. So I really recommend listening to the masterclass, because I talk about how I got through everything. Because the other thing that I've heard is that people are like, how do you look so good after divorce? How do you, like, you're so happy and radiant and vital? And the answer is, it's true. I am, because I'm not in a marriage anymore that's fucking up my nervous system every day. I'm sleeping again. My skin is the clearest it's ever been. Like, I have energy. I'm happy. I'm excited. Now, I also went through a total depression too, because there was a lot. And my body was giving me all sorts of signals. Like, I was getting dizzy every day. And if you're into Abraham Hicks, I was asking myself, what am I dizzy about? And I'm like, fucking everything. Jesus. And so, I've shared a lot here. I've answered some questions throughout it, like questions like, did you see signs before the wedding? Did I have doubts, at the wedding? So I've answered a ton of the different questions that you guys asked. I will say there is one here that, did your divorce solidify the tools you teach? And I want to say absolutely, abso-fucking-lutely. I have been UTP, so my kind of signature program, I have been living, breathing, embodying every single thing that I teach in this program more. It's been mind blowing to me to see it, to experience it. Like, I am living this program, and that's my clients who've done it. You'll understand what I mean. UTP also really saved me, because during September through December, we had a round of the Ultimate Transformation Program. And you girls, you were the only ones besides my close friends and therapists that I could be vulnerable with and share. And I was sharing exactly the tools and the exercises from the Dream Binder to help me move through everything. So everything that I teach, I can tell you, like, it works. It works better than I could have possibly imagined. And there were some other questions about, how do I feel about moving forward? Do I want kids again? Do I want marriage? And what I will say is, yes, I do. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to finally meet someone now that I've done this next layer of healing that I didn't know that I needed to do, but I'm so grateful that I did. So I love love. I don't know who doesn't. And if someone is scared to get back into a relationship, that's just because you don't want your heart to be broken again. But that's why I teach what I do. That's why I have this masterclass. This has been the greatest heartbreak in so many ways, shapes, and forms, because it's been inner child heartbreak and healing. It's been big Nikki But as I've said, I would go through all of it all over again just to get to where I am, because I feel more happy and at peace and content than I have ever done so in my entire life. I don't know how to explain it, but it has been hands down the fucking hardest time I've ever experienced. The depression has been real. There have been days where I literally can't get out of bed. I actually went to the doctor and I said, I think I need antidepressant medication. And the problem was I was in such a bad routine. I couldn't even take the pills. So I took them for 2 days and then I forgot about them. But my baseline is a very joyful, happy Nikki. So I know that it's not the pills that I need, but I want to be real and frank with you that, like, yeah, there is medicine if you really need it. And the doctor was like, we'll get you on for 3 months. Your serotonin receptors, like, you just haven't had a moment to catch up, like, from getting here and all the online cyber stuff. And I finally feel back to myself, and I feel like a new version of myself. And I really love myself. I really can say I love all sides of myself. I love the shadow sides. I love the ones that I'm working on. I love what I get to do. I love that I'm willing to do scary things. I have no regrets because I learned from everything. And so, through all of this, it has been one hell of a journey. It really has. And I believe in what I teach more than ever, because funny enough, stuff that I've had on the cover of my dream binder since 2016 is literally coming true at rapid speed here in London. It's crazy. It's amazing. The cats are so good. It's been so beautiful to see Simba, who, has been terrified of men, to, like, he's starting to come out more, and just, like, I have friends over, and it makes me happy that we all went through something. And I want to end this with, we all go through things in our life. We all go through things, whether it's a breakup with a partner, a friend, a loved one, a parent, whether it's death, whether it's moving, whether it's making a scary and uncomfortable change, it's uncertainty. We all face it. The question really just becomes, how do you handle it? How do you handle yourself in the moments of uncertainty, in the moments where you don't know what comes next? Because I can tell you, the last few months, there was a tunnel and I could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it was scary as shit. But I kept putting my feet one foot in front of the other every single day, doing the best that I could. And sometimes that looked like literally watching TV on the day, doing nothing. I was like, I can't. Some days that meant journaling all day long. Some days that meant just getting out for a walk. I would do one thing, committing to myself every day, doing it with love. And slowly but surely, I started finding my light again. And I can say, I feel like my light is burning brighter than ever. And I'm so excited to bring this podcast back. I've missed you all. I have so many incredible interviews that I've done during this time, though. Oh my God, mind blowing. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the space to share this. It's very vulnerable. It's very raw. I'm sure I'm going to get some slack over it, and it is what it is. But I really genuinely appreciate you. And I want to say to those of you who have messaged me, whether it's a friend, my therapist, whether it's just been you as the followers, my community, like, your messages have meant more than you will ever know. And I truly mean this, that you don't know what's going on behind people's lives, and you never know when sending a shitty message or an online thing will be the thing that just ends them, which it came very close for me. I got really depressed. And you also never know that when sending just a message of support, how much it can help in certain moments for certain times. So I thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to A Sharper Life. We are here. We are ready to go. And if you resonated with this episode, I would love to hear from you. I would love to leave a comment. If you feel like giving me some words of affirmation after all the shitty stuff I've been through and online hate, please leave a comment, a review. Tell me what you like about it. That would mean a lot. Message me on Instagram. Tell me what you thought. If you feel like this would resonate with anybody, please share it. Please share it, save it. I'm coming back, and I'm not back yet. I want to just like preface that of like, I'm not back yet because it's a new normal, and I still have days, I have moments, I have highs and lows, and I'm learning to work within the highs and lows, and I'm learning to give myself more compassion and more grace. And I'm scared shitless at the same time too, you guys. I'm really scared bringing the podcast back. Like, I'm scared I've paused it for so long that nobody's going to listen to it, but I'm not going to live in fear. I want to live in love. And so with that, if you're with me and you're in this journey, I would love to hear from you. And until next week, here's to a sharper life.